Welcome back. South Africa's constitution is hailed as one of the most progressive in the world. But 25 years after it was adopted, there's still a number of challenges. My next guest was a founding member of the ANC's Constitutional Committee. From the mid-80s, Penuell Maduna was closely involved with developing the ANC's constitutional guidelines. He was also part of the team that negotiated South Africa's transformation into a democratic nation. Maduna was Minister of Justice and Constitutional Development from 1999, and his retirement from political life took place in 2004. He joins me via Zoom to look back at 25 years of the South African Constitution. Thank you very much and welcome to the show this afternoon. And I want to start off with a quote from you, Mr. Maduna. You said at one stage, "The Constitution remains one of the best products of the human intellect. In fact, I wouldn't want, at least for now, to amend anything, because anything that you're looking for, you can find in the Constitution." There are many of those who get agitated over the land question and who think we can solve it by amending the Constitution. I hold a different view. The Constitution as it stands still sticks out like a sore thumb. It's a good document. So let's start by finding out from you, is that still your position?
Yes, it is my position. What is useful to remember is that at the end of the day, the Constitution, our fundamental law, is actually the foundation on which a society which is totally different from the societies we had both under colonialism and under apartheid. So it's important to remember that. So a whole process of building that new non-racial, non-sexist society is a basic requirement if, in the fullness of time, we and generations long after us are going to talk of and live in a totally different South Africa. It's important to bear that in mind.
Radical economic transformation and land expropriation continue to be thorny issues in South Africa, with many believing that our constitution, as progressive as it is, does not make provision for speedy enough transformation of our economy and, in essence, then withholds access for the historically disadvantaged and the poor. What would you say is the solution to that?
Well, first and foremost, let's ask ourselves a simpler question. Is the economy a constitutional issue? In other words, setting up a small bakery around some corner, etc. Do you want that to be part of the Constitution? Making shoelaces at the next corner, etc. Right. For me, that's a separate question altogether. A whole lot has yet to happen in the economy itself beyond the achievement of a new constitutional order. A whole lot has to happen. And that lot does not require, in my humble view, tampering with the Constitution. For instance, what would you change there to make the South African capitalist economy an inclusive and growing economy? What would you do? What would you change in the Constitution? The ones who call themselves radical transformation forces have yet to tell us what exactly you would have to change in order to achieve whatever goals we have in mind. Having said so, indeed, a whole lot has to be done in this country to change the situation continually afflicting the majority of our people, particularly blacks, and in particular, the indigenous African majority. A whole lot has to happen. Colonialism and apartheid occasioned this country irreparable harm, but human beings have to work the country out of the mire of the consequences of those systems. Now, if you say to someone, show me a section in the Constitution that prevents human beings from changing, so that in the fullness of time, we begin to see, experience, and live in a totally different South Africa. They are unable to tell us what has to change. Unfortunately, I am not saying the Constitution, which is, after all, a document knocked together by fellow human beings. It's not a God-given document. May not over time have to be changed in certain respects, etc., etc. I am convinced, for instance, that there is no need for us to tamper with Section 25 in order, Section 25 of the Constitution, in order to advance land reform. I have to be convinced that that is where the problem lies. In that sense, I join the former president, Kgalema Motlanthe, right? I join him. We don't have to tamper with it. We have to implement existing policies and put supportive systems behind, especially emerging black and women farmers. It has yet to happen. You can't prescribe access to capital, for instance, or finance in the Constitution. You can't say, banks, you shall fund this or else. You can't do it. But human beings have got to do it, right? Blacks and whites have to solve the land issue. It's imperative. We can't live with the current circumstances and bequeath them to future generations. It's got to change, right? People have to begin to think creatively about what they are going to do or contribute to deal with the known consequences of our past. There isn't a deity sitting somewhere in the clouds who decreed that because blacks are blacks, they should have no ownership of land. It was human beings sitting in Cape Town who enacted the 1913 Land Act. It wasn't any god surrounded by a bunch of angels who decreed that. So if human beings made choices then that disempowered, dispossessed, right, and converted fellow human beings into hewers of wood and throwers of water in their own country merely because they were black. Human beings can unmake that. We are aware of the consequences for both those who did that and those to whom it was done, as well as for the beneficiaries of all that. There was a time not so long ago in this country where if I saw a piece of land which I could acquire and utilize for production in agriculture, if I was not white, they would not even look at me. I've never pretended to be white, and at this age I have no reason to pretend to be white. But we've changed that now. The question is, what are we doing about that changed set of circumstances? My party, the ANC, has very good policies on all these issues. My government has very good policies on all these. Implementation is a major problem.
On that note, unfortunately, Mr. Maduna, we are going to have to leave you. Such an honor to speak to you today. Thank you for your insights. That was Penuell Maduna, founding member of the ANC's Constitutional Committee and former Minister of Justice and Constitutional Development, reaffirming there that implementation is absolutely key.